Last week I released a video where I talk about the most important lessons I learned on how to practice jazz improvisation. In the video I also mentioned that I studied jazz at a conservatory. And someone commented under this video, the simple word conservatory is an antithesis to jazz music. And actually you can find this kind of statement quite often. So people believing that studying jazz is bad. And I thought, this is actually great, I have a topic for my next video. So then I wondered, where does it actually come from, this belief? And I think one of the things is that many of the earlier jazz greats like Lester Young, Charlie Parker, Coleman Hawkins, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane and many more didn't study music but were completely self-taught. Also jazz in itself stands for freedom, self-expression and a community feeling. And this is in opposition to studying jazz where there are exams, grades and a standardization of what jazz is supposed to be. So this argumentation seems to make sense in general. But on the other hand, we also have from recent history many examples of great jazz musicians that did study jazz music. For example, Mark Turner, Chris Potter, Brett Mehldau, John Scofield or Joe Lovano. So to me it seems difficult to give an easy answer to this question. What I want to do instead in this video is share my experiences with studying jazz at the conservatory with you. And at the end of this video I will draw my conclusion and tell you if I would study jazz again if I would have to decide today. So just a very quick overview about my education at the conservatory. I studied the bachelor program of jazz saxophone from 2012 to 2016 at the Conservatory of Music in Würzburg, and later I studied for 2 years the master's degree at the Conservatory in Amsterdam, also in jazz saxophone. So one of the very positive aspects of studying jazz is for me definitely that I got all of this education pretty much for free. So the study fees in Germany and also in the Netherlands are quite low. You don't have to pay a lot of money each semester to study. And for this you get all those one-on-one lessons with great teachers, you get ensemble lessons, you get all the theory lessons and also ear training lessons. And you can take so many courses on so many really interesting subjects. I also took a course on the composition style of Debussy and Ravel, for example. And also with this you kind of get a guarantee that when you finish your bachelor degree in jazz music, you know all the basics that you need to know. So all the theory and basic ear training and many more things. So it gives you a very good foundation of what you should know as a jazz musician. And if you think about it, if I would have to pay for all of these lessons myself, it would cost a crazy amount of money. But of course this is different in, for example, the US, where it just costs much more to study in general. Another very positive aspect for me was the networking. So when you don't live in a big city like Berlin or like Amsterdam or Paris or also New York or any other city with a really big jazz scene, it is quite difficult to find like-minded people that are also interested in jazz and are really serious about it. And for me, studying in Würzburg, this was the place where I could find other people to connect with, to talk about music, to also form bands and to just jam together. I think that if I would have decided not to study jazz, it would have been very difficult to have the same connections as long as I wouldn't have moved right away to Berlin, for example, and connected there with the jazz scene. Another very positive aspect is that this study program gave me very clear goals. So for example, I had to prepare 30 standards by heart, and I don't know if I would be so consequent in learning them if there wouldn't be this goal set by the study program. And also when you play at these exams, you get feedback for your performance, which you usually don't have if you don't study music. So for example, in Amsterdam, I had my final exam and there were several great saxophone players sitting in the jury and giving me feedback afterwards, what they liked and what they didn't like. And this is very helpful and very hard to get if you don't study jazz. There are for sure many more aspects. If you want to talk about things you might have experienced, feel free to comment. I also think I would come up with more positive aspects, but I also want to take the chance in this video to talk about a few of the negative aspects I found when studying jazz. I think I can summarize the negative effect studying jazz had on me in one statement. I feel much less freedom and fulfillment when playing music now than before studying. And don't get me wrong, I really still enjoy playing and making music and everything around it, but it's not the same as it was before studying. And I don't want to say that this solely stems from studying music. There are also other factors at play. For example, the younger you are, the more excited are you naturally about the things you're doing, and also you get used a little bit to being a musician, for example, and then also your relationship changes and it might get more serious and less of only play and fun. But I have to say that again and again I meet musicians that didn't study jazz and they seem to me more relaxed and more free than it is the case for me, for example. So one thing that definitely changed my relationship to music is that if you study music, you have to follow a study program and you're not as free to follow your intuition and your musical preferences anymore. And I think this is just a completely logical and natural part of any study program. There has to be some standardization, there have to be exams, and they also have to be equal for the different students. Just as an example, at most conservatories, if you study there, you have to learn jazz standards. There's no way around it. And this definitely has an influence on what kind of musician you're going to become. So the study program makes a choice for you and you're not completely free anymore in which musical direction you want to go. Also, you might hear sentences from teachers like everyone needs to check out Charlie Parker or Michael Brecker is still too complex for you to check out. And this also influences you, of course, and you're not completely free to follow what you want to do most, but you're a little bit influenced and might not do anymore what you would like to do most. So to summarize this and also compare it to the older grades in jazz music like Lester Young, for example, you're not as free anymore to follow the musical path you would like to follow, but you're guided in a certain direction. And for me, this certainly had the effect that I learned what I should practice and which direction I should go into more. And I forgot a little bit what actually I would like to do and what interests me the most. Another negative point of studying jazz is that you're constantly told what you need to improve and what you're not good at yet. And this is completely logical, right? If you are a teacher at a conservatory, your job is to point out weaknesses in students and to help them to overcome them. But it can also, and in my case it had, negative effects on your artistic development, because you might start to constantly judge yourself and to always think, for example, am I playing with the perfect intonation? Am I playing with the perfect time? And so on and so on. I had this constant feeling of not being good enough. And this really led to me enjoying to practice and to play less than I had before. And it took me a very long time to get out of this. What mostly helped me were the books by Kenny Werner called Effortless Mastery and Becoming the Instrument. It's also not easy for me to break out of the thought patterns that I developed during my studies, to get the freedom back and to really develop an artistic voice and identity of my own. I think another aspect is that the conservatory is a little bit of an artificial place. So you don't actually play for an audience, you play for your teachers and your peers, so people that also value specific aspects of the music. For example, if you learn that a drummer doesn't play perfect time, it's not good enough. Whereas an audience that didn't study jazz themselves would emphasize other aspects of your music much more. And then when you are finished studying and you're actually supposed to play for an audience and also to make them like your music, because you depend in the end of the audience liking your music, it's difficult to get out of these mindsets and to understand that also other things matter, like how you present yourself, how you communicate with the audience, and many more things. So now the question is, would I study jazz again today? And if I would have to choose between not studying at all, so having to learn and do everything by myself, or being able to study music, I would definitely decide for studying music. I think there are a lot of benefits from studying music, but now with all the experience I have, I would tell my younger self a few things before beginning my studies. Listen to your preferences and practice more of what you like. Remember that you decided to do music because it's fun. If it's not fun, do something that makes you actual money. Practice relentlessly and get as good as you can, but don't forget that other things in life matter more than music. Don't forget to be happy about what you achieved already and don't only focus on your shortcomings. The whole topic of studying or not studying jazz is very controversial. I hope that by sharing my own story, I can contribute a little bit to this discussion. Thanks for watching and see you next time.